Good morning, everyone. It's Craig Studnicky from ISG and related ISG, here to present the Q2 results of our Miami report. Today is July 27th. It's just a few weeks since the end of Q2, and yes, things have changed again. The facts have changed. The underpinnings of our market have changed again. I'm here today to show you how and why with some real strong data. I'm presenting today from the sales office of Shoma Bay. It's a condominium property that ISG is selling in North Bay Village. The background are the views from the south side of Shoma Bay, staring at beautiful Biscayne Bay, Miami Beach, and of course, the famous skyline of Miami. We're selling condominiums on an island in Miami. This has been a really fun project. But it's fun selling real estate all over South Florida. Let's go to the headlines to demonstrate why. GlobeBest is a small publication that came out with a story in January of 2023 that talked about bidding wars are back. Now, you know that's true. For houses and condos in good neighborhoods, we're back to multiple offers. We're back to no mortgage contingencies. We're back to no inspection periods. Why? I'll get into that. Washington Post in May said that the prices for Florida homes seem to be holding steady. They might even be rising as the population of South Florida continues to grow. It's very true. When you see some of the results from Q1 to Q2 just this year. And then, finally, the real deal. In May of 23, also talked about pre-construction and why some of these projects that are seemingly successfully selling so well, why they're not breaking ground. Well, we're going to get into that a little bit too. Let's first start with the results of single-family homes in Miami-Dade, Fort Lauderdale, Broward, and Palm Beach, the Tri-County area, Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. This graph basically shows what's happening with inventory that's currently available in multiple listings. This is the resale inventory. Back a year ago, about a year and a half ago in Q1 of 22, I was very nervous because we were at a frighteningly low number of single-family homes. Around 5,300 houses for sale in the Tri-County area is like zero. We got a little relief through 2022 because mortgage rates increased, fewer sales, more houses coming on the market. We reached almost 11,000 houses for sale by the end of the year. It's not ideal. I'd like to see that closer to 20,000 houses for sale, but it's a lot better than 5,000. But then we saw this Miami miracle effect. We're watching how people continue to flock to South Florida, either because they're just tired of paying high taxes in states like New York, New Jersey, and California, or they're coming with one of these 140 companies, these Fortune 500 companies that are relocating to South Florida, or they're just coming because of our wonderful weather, but either way, they're coming. And what happened between Q4 and Q1 of this year was sobering. Inventory went from almost 11,000 to 9,000, and now it dropped again to 7,500. Yeah, I'm saying by the end of this year, we're going to be back to where we were at the end of 2021, dangerously low inventory of single-family homes. It stands to, look at this next chart, it stands to reason that most people that are moving to Florida from wherever, but most of them are Americans at this point, they want something new. What's new? A condo or a house that's less than 10 years old is generally considered new. But look what's happened then with the inventory new of 10 years old versus 20 years old versus more. We have only 1,400 houses for sale in the Tri-County area that are less than 10 years old. Okay, divided by 3. You've got the point. There's not many. In that little category last year in 2022, even with high mortgage rates, over 6,700 houses were sold in the Tri-County area. Okay, we're halfway through the year. But if you figure that about 3,400 more of these houses, 3,000 whatever, may get sold in the second half of this year, you don't have enough inventory. There's only 1,400 houses for sale that are new, 10 years old or less. There's organic urgency because, again, we're dealing with supply shock with newer houses. When you go to 20 years old, it doesn't improve that much. There's only 2,200 houses for sale that were built in the 2000s. We're really still dealing with supply shock when it comes to single-family houses. When you get into the 90s and the 80s and the 70s, you've got a little more relief. There's 3,800 houses. The price points are much more attractive. They typically range between 400,000 up to, say, $1 million. But for those buyers that want something new, you can see the hurry up and not wait attitude as demonstrated by sales. This next chart shows what's been happening with sales, really starting with the average price of a house, as well as the velocity of sales. But let's look at the prices. In 2018, the average price was $448,000. Last year, or right now, $1.2 million. The biggest increase, if you look at this chart, the biggest increase was between 2020 and 2021. That was the largest appreciation we've ever seen in single-family homes in South Florida. And why? 2 words: social distancing. In that year, we all remember what that year was. We were pounded on the concept of social distancing, and the easiest way to manage social distancing was with a house. And the demand for single-family homes was never stronger than that period of time. We saw the biggest increase in the value of houses from 2020 to 2021. The increase this year is not as significant as 2020 to 2021, but price of houses are still going up because we're still dealing with supply shock. And remember, Florida is the fastest growing state in the United States. Last year, we grew by over 1,200 people a day. Half of those people come to South Florida. I've covered that with you before. That explains these price increases with houses. Now let's go to condos. This one is really going to surprise you, I think, because it surprised me, and I study this stuff almost every single day. Inventory, yeah, it's kind of like houses. We were very, very low in Q1 of 2022. We got a little relief by the end of last year, but look what's happened now. Now you're down to less than 9,000 condos for sale, actually less than 8,500 in the Tri-County area: Miami-Dade, Fort Lauderdale, Broward, and Palm Beach. Now, I just walked you through how buyers of real estate in South Florida, they're always asking us to show them something new, whether it's a house or a condo. When you get to condos, we now have fewer condos for sale that are 10 years old or less than we have single-family homes. Condos are now more popular than houses just based on the velocity of sales, not to mention the prices. You have 885 houses for sale in the Tri-County area that are less than 10 years old. I fear that that's maybe 3 months of inventory. If you go back to the 2000s, those are condos that are 20 years old or less. You're talking about 2,500. You might have 4 months of inventory, but you're starting to get the sensation that I'm feeling. There may be 8,300 condos for sale, but when you look at what people want to buy, there's more like 3,000. And you divide that by 20-year-old inventory and less than 10-year-old inventory. Combine it all, you're dealing with like 1,000 condos per county: Dade, Broward, Palm Beach. Organic urgency. We don't have a whole lot of supply. Look what's happened to the prices. So I told you that the biggest increase we've ever seen in the value of single-family homes occurred between 2020 and 2021, mostly because of the concept of social distancing that was drilled into our heads in that year. It's almost as if 2020 is absolutely in the rear-view mirror of all of these buyers, because look what happened just this year, between last year and this year. The biggest appreciation, the biggest price increases of condominiums in the history of condominiums in South Florida occurred in just the last 12 months. The biggest increase. Yes, I'm saying that the demand for condos now is stronger than single-family homes. Part of the reason for that is most of the folks that are coming here, they want to be on the water. Whether it's the ocean, the intracoastal, or the bay, they want to be on the water, or they want to be able to look at that beautiful blue turquoise water. That's what they want. And since they can't find a lot of single-family houses on the water anymore in the Tri-County area, the buyers are asking all of us, take me to a condo. Take me to a condo because you're not getting me off the water. These numbers say so. This next chart is the furtherance of that attitude from the buyers. They're proving it to us. I mean, look what happened with the average price of just oceanfront condos. You're not going to get these Americans off the water, not right now, because they still have a few properties that they can choose from, and that's what they want to buy. Price is secondary. They want to look at the water. In 2018, I could have sold you anything on Miami Beach that was new. Well, it was new. It was definitely, when I say new, these are condos that were developed beginning in 2012. Most of the construction started in 2013, 2014, and they were finished in 17, 18, or 19. So these are new condos. And these new condos, I could have sold you something on Miami Beach in 2018, 2019, prior to 2020, for under $5 million. Let's just fast forward right to 2023. That same condo today is averaging over $12 million, close to $4,000 a square foot. It's the Americans. They want to be those Americans that want to be on the beach want to be on the beach, and they want to stare at the water. And when they look at the tightness of inventory that's available on MLS, they don't negotiate very hard, because they're not going to negotiate themselves out of the water. They want the water. There's still beautiful properties on both the ocean and the bay. My advice is focus your attention there, because I promise you that's where their attention is. This is the bay. Look what the Americans have done to the bay. Prior to 2020, I could have sold you anything on the bay, directly on the bay for under $700 a foot, a brand new condo, something that was developed in the last cycle. Now it's $1,100 a foot. Average price is now exceeding $2 million. Who's paying this? The Americans that want to be on the water. They want to be on that. The mainland is now starting to see a little bit of appreciation. I think this goes to the popularity of condos. Now, some of the condos that are on this chart are not directly on the bay, but some have bay views. And we're starting to see a little bit of an uptick, a little bit. In my opinion, next year you're going to see that chart rise a lot more aggressively than you do now for one reason. The inventory on the beach, on the intracoastal, on the bay is going to be super, super tight. Right now it's just tight. And that's going to cause the mainland, in my opinion, to start going north. Pre-construction. So many of you say, okay, Craig, I understand that the MLS inventory is kind of tight, but we're going to get some relief in pre-construction because there's all these projects under construction, is what I hear. There's 47 of them in the Tri-County area. Yes, there are 47 of them. That's true. And most of them have been phenomenally successful selling. I've had ISG for over 30 years, and I can tell you in all the work I've done with developers, usually the sales are lagging the progress of the development of the project. This is completely reverse. The sales are there. It's the developer's ability to build that's holding things back right now. And what caused all that? You know, it was 2020. We knew that 2020 was going to cause inflation. Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Fed, his number one priority is to tap down inflation. He's done it by raising interest rates. It seems as if it's working. But because interest rates have crept up so much, in the last 2 years, they've simply doubled. The borrowing costs have made some of these construction loans not very attractive. Not to mention, getting a guaranteed maximum price from a bondable general contractor is pretty close to impossible still, but it is improving. I really believe that this time next year, you're going to see a lot of cranes in the sky because it's now starting to level out. But because construction costs are not totally leveled out and because borrowing costs are so high, these 47 condos are selling very well, but not many of them have started construction. This next chart shows there's 11. Only one of the 11 is over 30 stories. See, if you're under 30 stories, you can get a guaranteed maximum price because the amount of materials you need to buy, concrete, glass, and steel, is not quite as aggressive as you would need on a 50-story, an 80-story, a 100-story. That's why you're seeing all the action of mostly condos that are under 30 stories. And in my opinion, all of the others will start to build next year when most of these other factors are somewhat finite. It's not such a guess anymore. The developers need another 6 months or so to sort that out, but it's right around the corner, guys. Oh, condo hotels, transient condos, Airbnbs. I've been asked by so many of you to talk about this because we never do. I never do because I typically talk about just the condos or the houses that satisfy real end users. Whether you're buying this as a second home, because that market is still very much alive, whether they're coming from South America or all parts of the United States. But most of the demand lately has been primary homeowners that are moving here, that are looking for new dentists. They're looking for seats in schools for their children. This is a different Miami. This is a different Fort Lauderdale. This is a different Palm Beach since 2020. I don't really typically get a lot of requests for these transient condos, but I have from some of you, so we decided to just give a quick snapshot of where they are. We're calling them transient, and let me break it out two ways. There's the traditional condo, and there's the transient condo. The traditional condo is something like I live in, and many of you do too. I have rental restrictions, very strict rental restrictions. I can only rent my apartment once a year, and it's a 6-month minimum. Rental restrictions equals traditional condo. When the developer of determines in the condominium documents, usually in the rules and regulations, that there are no rental restrictions, well, they've turned that into a transient condo. It can be managed by Airbnb and various brokers and management companies, or it can be managed by a hotel management company that's on site. As an example, ISG sold the W in Fort Lauderdale for both Related New York and Related Miami. There, it's a condo hotel. But people had the right to manage it themselves through Airbnb. So we had about, a dozen buyers that manage it on their own through Airbnb. The rest of them all manage it through Marriott, because Marriott is the hotel management company that owns and manages all the W hotels throughout the world. So I guess my point is whether it's Airbnb or whether it's a condo hotel, they're transient because the developer determined that there were no rental restrictions whatsoever. You can rent them every day. And as you know, Airbnb, even in condo hotel, you can rent it a nightly, weekly, monthly, whatever. A traditional condo is the exact opposite. I don't want to see people moving, checking in and checking out every day where I live permanently. As a vacation home, no problem. As a permanent home, no. So we divide them into two categories. Here's the summary of these transient condominiums. Again, whether they're condo hotels or managed by Airbnb platforms, they're still condominiums with no rental restrictions. So we're calling them transient. I've owned ISG for a little over 30 years now. And in that 30 years, there have been close to 8,000, the actual number is 7,915, transient condos developed in Miami, Miami Beach, and Fort Lauderdale. They don't perform exactly like the traditional condos do because they're transient. They have a lot more moving parts. But the developers in South Florida decided to practically double that inventory since 2020. We're now dealing with almost 7,400 condo hotels, Airbnbs, transient condos, of which most have not broken ground yet, but like the traditional condos, they're selling very, very well. Like the traditional condos, those developers have the same constraints. They've got to work out construction costs. They've got to wait for borrowing costs to drop. How well will these new 7,400 condo hotels perform? Don't know. Most of them, as I said, have not broken ground. They won't be completed for 3, 4, or 5 years from now. So I guess we'll know now. Well, I guess we'll know then. But once again, as I said about the traditional condos, these transient condos, they are selling very well. Here's a quick map to show where most of them are located. They're within a half a mile of each other in downtown Miami. Yes, they will all be competing for the same hotel guests, for sure. But the good news for downtown Miami is when these projects get finished, this is a wonderful shot in the arm for downtown Miami. Because where these are all located, which is closer to the Brightland train station, it's not very pretty right now, but it will be in 3, 4, 5 years when all of these projects get finished. It's a wonderful shot in the arm for the transformation story of downtown Miami that we all believe in and we're all waiting to see. I almost wish it was the opposite. In other words, there's more of these transient condos now that are in development than there are traditional condos. This next chart I've showed you before, but I'll show you again. In the 2000s, we built way too many. We built almost 60,000 condos, pre-construction. Way too many in Dade, in Broward, in Palm Beach County. In the last cycle, which began in 2012, we built and we sold close to 20,000. That's a nice number. That's actually the number I think we need to satisfy demand. Maybe it's closer to 25,000. Because remember, Florida is still the fastest growing state in the country. South Florida gets half of the daily population every single day, which is plus or minus 600 people a day that come to Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County. But instead, we're only developing 6,700. And out of the 6,700, as I showed you earlier, there's only 1,100 that are going vertical. 1,100. So the other 5,600, hopefully they go vertical next year. Now from there, you have to add 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, depending on how tall the building is before people can move in. So what am I saying? We have to rely for the next year or two for those folks that are moving here, mostly on existing inventory that you find in MLS. The big takeaway today, or some of the big takeaways today, is we're still dealing with supply shock. Most of the folks that are moving here, they really want new. They want a new house, they want a new condo. Come on, with a new condo, the ceilings are higher, the kitchens and baths are nicer, the amenities are nicer. It's an easy move, but we're running really tight on that particular inventory. That's why we took the time today to show you what's available that's less than 10 years, less than 20 years than others. The urgency should automatically be there for the newer stuff. Prices are continuing to appreciate because, forgive my repetition, but we are the fastest growing state in the country. People keep coming here. Miami is probably the most popular real estate market in the entire US, and maybe one of the most talked about real estate markets in the world. The need for pre-construction is there. The developers, I know, whether it's, no matter who the developer is, they are all working very diligently to figure out with pencil and paper how to make the numbers work so that in fact they can go vertical. Remember, most of these condos were underwritten in 2020. No one knew about the kind of inflation that was coming and the effect that was going to have on our inability to our temporary inability to manufacture. Nobody saw that coming. They're working on it. And as I've said, I really do believe by next year, it's all solved. Condos, The biggest price increase in the history of condos we just saw year over year, starting July 1 of 2022, when mortgage rates doubled, till June 30th of this year, the largest appreciation of condominiums in the history of condos in South Florida, it just took place. Despite all recession talks, despite the high mortgage interest rate conversation, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter because we're that popular, we're dealing with really tight inventory, and people keep coming. So what's my suggestion? My advice, focus on all of that stuff that's less than 10 years old first, less than 20 years old second, because those folks that are moving here, they don't want to wait 3, 4, 5, 6 years, or they don't want to live in the land of vagaries. They need to know when they can actually move in. You're going to find more comfort from that right now on existing inventory. That's the end of Q3 or Q2. I'm really looking forward to Q3 because part of the reason we report the Miami report every single quarter is because the information is in fact changing every single quarter. Welcome to one of the most dynamic real estate markets in the world. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. I'll see you in a few months. Bye-bye.